They scrutinized her ID, questioned her legitimacy, and called security, all before realizing they were about to deny service to the one person who could end their careers in a heartbeat. It had started as a quiet thought, just a whisper in the back of Evelyn Carter's mind, something so small and faint it was easy to ignore. For months, she had pushed it aside, dismissing it as an overreaction or unnecessary worry. But the more she reflected on it, the more it gnawed at her, refusing to be silenced. Evelyn had built Carter Financial Trust from scratch. It wasn't just a bank, it was her legacy. She wasn't merely the CEO with her name on the building and her signature on the policies. She had spent years in the trenches, ensuring her institution was different, accessible, built on fairness, respect, and dignity for everyone. But lately, she had begun to question whether that was truly the reality. Those whispers she'd overheard at gatherings, offhand comments from friends, subtle anecdotes from people she trusted, concerns about how certain customers were treated at certain branches. Nothing headline-worthy, no smoking guns, just a feeling, a sense that something was off. At first, she had dismissed them. After all, Carter Financial Trust had ironclad policies on non-discrimination, customer service, and equality. But policies were just ink on paper. Real change came from action, and Evelyn needed proof. Not as a CEO behind a polished desk, not as a boss commanding an entire company. She needed to know what it felt like to be an ordinary customer. So today, that's exactly who she was. There was no tailored blazer, no silk blouse, no designer shoes. Just a simple gray cardigan, faded jeans, and scuffed sneakers. Her hair was tied back in a messy ponytail, and her makeup was minimal. She didn't want to stand out. She wanted to blend in, to test the system she had built. The branch she chose was in Dayton, Ohio, a location she had greenlit personally 4 years ago. She remembered the ribbon-cutting ceremony vividly, shaking hands with the newly hired branch manager, posing for photos with the staff, giving a speech about integrity and the importance of trust in banking. Back then, she'd been so confident in what she was creating. Now, she wasn't so sure. Evelyn parked her car and walked toward the entrance. The automatic doors slid open with a familiar whoosh, releasing a burst of cool air mixed with the sterile scent of fresh paper and industrial air freshener. It was quiet inside. A few customers sat waiting. 2 were in line. At the far end, a teller counted bills behind thick security glass. She adjusted the strap of her worn leather bag on her shoulder and stepped toward the counter. The young woman working the station was in her mid-20s, pale skin, auburn hair pulled back into a severe bun. Her expression was indifferent as she glanced up. No greeting, no smile, just a quick once-over before her gaze returned to the screen in front of her. Evelyn cleared her throat softly. "Hi, I'd like to make a withdrawal." The teller didn't look up. She grabbed a clipboard from beneath the counter and slid it toward Evelyn without a word. Evelyn picked it up. It was standard: name, account number, withdrawal amount. She filled it in neatly. $5,000. Not a huge sum by any means, but enough to require an ID check. She handed the clipboard back along with her driver's license. And then it began. The teller scanned the information on the form, then looked at the ID. Her brow furrowed, lips pressed into a thin line. A tension that hadn't been there moments ago settled over her face. Evelyn remained calm. She waited, gave her the benefit of the doubt. The teller finally lifted her gaze, really looking at Evelyn now. There was hesitation there, doubt, suspicion, and that's when Evelyn knew. This wasn't about the amount she was withdrawing. It wasn't about the bank's policy or security concerns. It was about who they thought she was or wasn't. The teller's fingers hovered over the keyboard. Then, with a quick decision, she placed Evelyn's ID on the counter instead of processing the transaction. I'll be right back." Without another word, she picked up the ID and disappeared behind a door marked manager's office. Evelyn exhaled slowly, her nails tapping a soft rhythm against the marble countertop. She had expected resistance. She hadn't expected this. But she wasn't leaving. Not without answers. The lobby grew quieter as Evelyn waited. A man in a rumpled suit stood a few spaces behind her, scrolling on his phone. Another customer, an older woman in a floral blouse, chatted amiably with a different teller. Transactions happening as they should, smoothly, effortlessly. 5 minutes passed, then 10. Evelyn's patience wore thin. The door to the office opened, and out stepped the teller, this time accompanied by a man Evelyn instantly recognized. Clayton Reed, the branch manager. Middle-aged, stocky, his dark skin smooth and shiny under the fluorescent lights. His rimless glasses perched precariously on the bridge of his nose. His name tag gleamed, Clayton Reed, branch manager. He approached the counter slowly, with the calculated caution of someone who had already made a judgment and was now following a script. "Good afternoon, ma'am," he said, his tone flat but polite. "I understand you're attempting to make a withdrawal?" Evelyn nodded once. "That's correct. $5,000. From my account. You have my ID." Clayton gave a slow nod as he picked up the license from the counter, turning it over as if expecting it to dissolve in his fingers. He held it up to the light, then studied Evelyn's face closely. "MS. Carter, is this your first time banking with us?" The question was delivered so casually, but Evelyn heard the implication behind it clear as day. "Do you belong here?" Her tone cooled. "No, I've banked here since this branch opened." Clayton nodded again, slowly, thoughtfully. "And you're withdrawing $5,000 today, correct?" Evelyn's jaw tensed. "That's what I wrote down." The manager turned the ID over once more. Then, without looking at her, he asked, "And what do you do for work?" "MS. Carter." Evelyn blinked. She let out a short, incredulous laugh. There it was, the moment where professionalism slipped and truth peeked through. "I'm in finance," she replied carefully. Clayton smiled, though it didn't reach his eyes. "Oh, what kind?" She let the silence stretch just long enough to make him uncomfortable. "Banking," she said flatly. He paused for a heartbeat. Then he doubled down. "I see," he said slowly. "And this is a personal account, not a business account." Evelyn folded her arms across her chest. "That's what it says on the form." Another nod. Another glance at the teller. A hesitation. Then, as if coming to some invisible conclusion, Clayton placed her ID back on the counter. "Unfortunately, we won't be able to process this withdrawal at this time." Evelyn stared at him, her mind processing the absurdity of the words. "I'm sorry," she asked, straightening her posture. He clasped his hands together in front of him. "We're unable to verify the transaction." She could feel the anger rising in her chest. "What do you mean? You have my ID. You have my account number. What's left to verify?" Clayton's voice was cool, measured. "It's just a precaution. We take security very seriously here." Security. The word people used when they didn't want to say what they really meant. Evelyn's fingers curled into fists at her sides. She knew exactly what this was, and she wasn't about to let it slide. What happened next would be the defining moment of Clayton Reed's career, and not in the way he thought. When Clayton pressed the silent alarm button beneath the counter and summoned security, Evelyn realized she had given him too much time to correct his mistake. The guard who appeared was tall, broad-shouldered, his uniform impeccable. His hand rested casually near his utility belt as he approached. His face was unreadable, but the statement was clear. They thought she was the problem. Evelyn didn't flinch. She turned to the guard with cool composure. "Are you here to help me access my account?" she asked smoothly. "Or to escort me out?" The guard hesitated. He glanced at Clayton, who gave him a subtle nod. And that was it. That was the moment Evelyn knew this wasn't going away quietly. What Clayton didn't realize was that Evelyn had been recording the interaction the moment it became clear what was happening. She angled her phone slightly, ensuring the camera captured everything. The teller's avoidance, Clayton's smug detachment, the security guard's looming presence. Then, in a voice that was calm and precise, she said, "Clayton, let me introduce myself properly." For the first time, he faltered. Evelyn reached out, plucked her ID from the counter, and held it up. She tapped her finger against the name. "You see this?" she asked softly. "This isn't just any customer's license." She let the words hang. "I'm Evelyn Carter, founder and CEO of Carter Financial Trust." The silence that followed was deafening. The security guard stepped back instinctively. The teller turned pale. Even Clayton's practiced expression cracked. And then Evelyn laid it all out.